1999. Star Wars makes its grand return to the big screen. The euro was established as the official currency of the European Union. Napster was unleashed, so was SpongeBob SquarePants. Bill Clinton survives impeachment, and Vladimir Putin ushers in a new era for Russia. The Yankees won their second straight World Series, the Broncos won their second straight Super Bowl, and the Spurs and Stars made Texas proud with their first championships. Shakespeare in Love wins Best Picture, Celine Dion wins Song of the Year with My Heart Will Go On, and Keanu Reeves knows Kung Fu.
For the last time, no you don't.
1999 was a stacked year in the coaster world. We had brand new coaster models, major brand new parks, a revolution in the theme park experience, and so much more. So let's dive into it. These are the events that changed the theme park industry from 1999. Let's take a look at the stories that couldn't crack the list. And now for the top 10. July 1st, 1999. The owner of Iowa's Arnolds Park, the oldest park west of the Mississippi River, dating back to 1889, agreed to sell the park to a commercial real estate developer. The plan was to build new lakeside housing on the park site, along with new docks, a hotel, and retail development. But there was one ray of hope: the Great Lakes Maritime Museum. The real estate developer recognized the sentimental value of the park and agreed to sell the land for $5.5 million, but they had to raise the money by August 1st. They had 1 month to launch a campaign to save the park. The museum did have a plan to get people to donate. For $500, you could buy a personalized brick for a walkway to the park. For $5,000, your name would appear on one of the park's bumper cars. With 2 days left, they raised $4.4 million. They used the late blitz to get them to their goal and beyond, ending up with $7.25 million. The park was sold to the museum, who assumed ownership, and the prior owner donated all the rides and buildings so the park could live on. The park was saved, and it continues to operate to this day. The Swiss duo, Bolliger and Mabillard, known as B&M, got their start in 1990 building small stand-up coasters. In their third year, they went bigger and decided to sit the riders down in a more traditional way. They introduced Kumba as their first sitting coaster in 1993, and then broke the inversion record, opening DragonCon at Port Aventura in 1995. Right after DragonCon opened to the public, B&M started developing a new twist to this model. Rather than having a lead car and having a floor underneath the riders' feet, the trains would be much more wide open, with their riders' legs dangling right above the track, and this would simulate the sensation of flight, especially in that front car where there's nothing in front of you. April 2nd, 1999. Six Flags debuted the first one of these, Medusa at Six Flags Great Adventure, now known as Bizzaro. This gimmick would explode in popularity, with 4 more being sold in 1999 to be opened in 2000, and new installations every year through 2005. These flowless trains would also be used on their dive coaster model. They thought this would enhance the ride experience. They would do the same thing for their old stand-up coasters. The ground-up flowless model died off after 2013, but the train design lives on. March 22nd, 1999. Hasbro releases a brand new computer game where you can build and operate your own theme park, Rollercoaster Tycoon. Players had to manage a budget, but still build rides that the virtual public wanted to ride, all while keeping their park clean, the rides maintained, and dealing with those pesky vandals. There would be goals to meet for each park scenario, or you could just blow off the mission and build the greatest park you can imagine. The game exploded in popularity, with an expansion pack coming out later in 1999, and another in 2000. Rollercoaster Tycoon 2 came out in 2002, RCT3 in 2004, and many other mobile iterations have been introduced since 2014. Rollercoaster Tycoon introduced a new generation of young people to theme parks and coasters, myself included. Right around the time I started riding coasters in 2000, I was addicted to Rollercoaster Tycoon, and I credit this with getting me into the coaster world, along with millions of others. Ever since the mid-90s, Premier Parks has been super aggressive. They had been buying parks left and right. But in 1998, they reeled in a big fish. They acquired the Six Flags chain for $1.86 billion, and that would make them even more bold going into 1999. After 4 years of sitting dormant, they agreed to operate Magic Springs. They acquired Reino Aventura in Mexico City for $59 million. They purchased Warner Bros. Movie World in Germany, allowing them to use Warner Bros. And DC Comics characters worldwide, and agreed to operate the new Warner Bros. Park in Spain, opening in 2002. Then came the rebranding. Several of the parks were given the Six Flags name, including Riverside Park, now Six Flags New England, and they were announced to get 3 new coasters for the year 2000. This included a massive hypercoaster. Geauga Lake was now to be known as Six Flags Ohio, and they announced 4 new coasters for the next year, including a B&M Floorless and a CCI wooden coaster. Reino Aventura was rebranded as Six Flags Mexico, and they also announced a new coaster. Wallaby Flava was renamed Six Flags Holland, and they announced 4 new coasters also. The CEO of Premier Parks, Kieran Burke, announced that these 4 rebranded parks would get a total of 75 new rides and attractions, totaling over $140 million in new investments. In an era where everyone was being ambitious and aggressive, Premier Parks took it to a whole new level, something that will never be matched by any other chain for the rest of time. Ever since Disneyland opened in 1955, Walt Disney was looking for places to expand. He got into the Florida market in 1971, went overseas to Tokyo in 1983, then Paris in 1992, and in 1999, they had their eyes on a brand new market, the biggest market on planet Earth, China. The park was to be located in Hong Kong, a joint venture with the government, with Disney putting up $314 million, taking a 43% stake. Disney had been negotiating with the government for months, but they finally reached an agreement later in the year. The government would put up $2.6 billion, taking a 50% stake. The government wanted to boost the economy of Hong Kong, looking for 16,000 jobs in construction and 18,000 more once the park opened in 2005. For Disney's part, they wanted to tap the wallets of 1.28 billion Chinese people. Hong Kong Disneyland opened on schedule, but it's got one crazy history, and it did not turn out like Disney wanted. But that's another story for another day. I'll link the Defunctland video on this park down below. It might be his best video, so please check it out. June 12, 1999. The CEO of S&S Sports Power, Stan Checketts, unveiled the brand new coaster concept. The company was already famous for their air-powered drop towers, and now they were turning them on their side. The original concept from Checketts detailed a 500-foot tower, with speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. There would be a vertical drop over the top of the tower, and that would be the first true vertical drop on any full-circuit coaster. These were big dreams, and they would never be realized. That's not to say the model was a failure. They made a prototype. This one was 165 feet tall, hitting a top speed of 80 miles per hour, and it was bought by Paramount's King's Dominion. They had one other early installation, this being Dodonpa at Fuji-Q Highland, hitting a top speed of nearly 112 miles per hour. That's impressive and a world record, but even more insane, it gets there in 1.6 seconds. The compressed air launch isn't the weapon of choice for other manufacturers, but S&S continues to use this in their powerful launch coasters, including Max Force, the fastest accelerating coaster in the US, hitting 78 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds. May 6, 1989. The hypercoaster is born in Sandusky, Ohio. Cedar Point debuts Magnum XL 200, built by Aerodynamics, the first full-circuit 200-foot coaster. Suddenly, height and speed are valued over inversions. Togo had a mini version of the Hyper open a year prior with Bandit, and they would be crossing that 200-foot mark by the mid-90s, along with Morgan. By the end of the century, there was a changing of the guard. March 27, 1999. Apollo's Chariot opens at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, the first B&M hypercoaster. The company was known for the looping models, but they traded those inversions for large parabolic hills full of airtime. Raging Bull would open at Six Flags Great America, and the B&M Hyper revolution began. There have been 18 of these built over the last 22 years, but B&M wasn't alone in the hyper market. May 15, 1999. Superman Ride of Steel opens at Six Flags Darien Lake, the first ever Intamin mega coaster. Like the B&M model, these would feature big camelback hills, but also big drawn-out helices, focusing on airtime and speed. This would be the first of 9 mega coasters, and this helped spawn their next project for the following year, the Giga Coaster. As Aerodynamics, Morgan, and Togo dropped off the scene, B&M and Intamin led the hyper wars into the 21st century, all starting with these 3 American coasters in 1999. Theme parks pride themselves on their record of safety. One accident could tarnish their reputation forever. In 1999, there seemed to be a rash of incidents that started raising eyebrows. One person was killed and 10 others injured when a boat tipped over on Roaring Rapids at Six Flags Over Texas. 7 people were injured at Paramount's Carowinds when 2 trains on Thunder Road collided in the station. One rider was injured after falling out of Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags Darien Lake. A 12-year-old boy fell to his death on the drop tower at Paramount's Great America. This was one of the driving forces behind a new law passed in California, requiring comprehensive yearly inspections of all thrill rides at every park in the state, performed by a state-certified engineer. All serious injuries had to be reported to the state, and they had the power to shut down any rides they deemed unsafe. This wouldn't stop in California. Representative Ed Markey introduced a federal bill, giving the government the authority to inspect, investigate, and set safety standards for all parks, temporary and permanent. Opponents of the bill said the odds of dying on a ride was 1 in 250 million, but with rides getting bigger and faster, injuries at amusement parks had risen 87% since 1994. Federal regulation of amusement parks became one of Markey's signature issues, and he even pitched a limit on G-forces a ride could reach. He would reintroduce the bill 6 more times through 2011, but it never came to a vote. Although some states adopted laws regulating their own theme parks, it never became a federal issue. Universal and Disney had been throwing the Southern California market together since 1964. Then Disney expanded across the country in 1971, opening the Magic Kingdom. They would open 2 more parks in their brand new resort, and then Universal decided to make the move themselves, making their Grand Orlando debut in 1990. While Disney was building their 4th park, Universal knew it was time to raise their own game. The expansion of Universal Studios Florida would cost $1 billion, including a brand new City Walk area connecting the original park with a brand new one. This was to be called Islands of Adventure. Guests would enter a world of 6 different themed islands, full of world-class 3D dark rides, as well as spectacular thrill rides. Islands of Adventure gave Universal some legitimacy in the area, and the whole resort was renamed Universal Studios Escape. Apparently, this was confusing, and people thought the new park was just a new area of the old park, so it was rebranded as the Universal Orlando Resort. Since 1999, Islands of Adventure has been a huge success for Universal, nearly matching the main park's attendance year over year, and getting some of the biggest and best attractions Universal has to offer. It's grown into one of the best parks in the country. Since amusement parks became a thing, waiting in line for rides and attractions was inevitable. It was unavoidable. In 1999, Disney set out to change that. They rolled out a trial system at Disneyland and Animal Kingdom called FastPass, a virtual queue. Guests would enter their park ticket into a kiosk, and they'd be given a time to return to ride. The time slots would continue to roll, so the amount of people allowed in the special line wouldn't be too big at any given time, cutting the actual time waiting in line down to a tiny fraction. This was a great idea for the guests, being able to enjoy other aspects of the park outside a queue, and it was also great for the park, since guests would have more time to spend money at their stores and restaurants. Alton Towers was rolling out their own version of a virtual queue at the same time. Disney wouldn't charge anything for this service. This has evolved over time to include upcharge options, like MaxPass, which you could use on your phone, FastPass Plus, which allowed you to reserve attractions months in advance, and eventually the Disney Genie, set up to replace all the other systems in 2021. Just about every other park and chain have adopted their own version of the virtual queue, taking advantage of the benefits of having people wait in line outside the actual line, and scoring some extra cash by charging them to use it, turning the virtual queue system into more of a skip-the-line system. FastPass was one of the greatest innovations in theme park history, and the #1 development from 1999. That's a wrap for 1999. Let me know what you think of these stories, if there's anything big I left out here, and if you have any theme park memories from 1999. For me, this was before my first real trip to Magic Mountain, but I did take a trip to Knott's and got to ride Ghost Rider for the first time. Brand new and without that ugly scream tunnel. It was by far the best coaster I'd ever ridden up to that point at age 11. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like. And if you're new here and love coasters, give me a sub, and check out my playlist for other years I've done in this format. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my new channel, Home Run Productions, if you also happen to love baseball like me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.